National Center for Transgender Equality. We have a case that we're filing today. Our speakers will be able to share the impact of exclusion of the state healthcare plan, and we're flanked today by supporters of transgender equality, transgender people from the community, and the folks from the legal team here. I'm going to pass it off to David Brown at TILDEF, who is going to share a bit more about the case itself. And then at the end of this, we'll have time for questions. Yeah, thanks for being here. David?
Thank you, Adam, and good morning, and thank you all for being here. My name is David Brown. I am the legal director of the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, or TILDEF for short. We're a national nonprofit organization that's committed to ensuring a bright and lasting future for transgender people. And today, we are filing a lawsuit against the state of Georgia because of its discriminatory employee health benefit plan, which denies coverage for transgender-related health care. Solely because they are transgender, the Georgia State Health Benefit Plan has denied coverage for health care to our clients, Micah Rich, Benjamin Johnson, and John Doe, the young adult son and dependent of Jane Doe, who works for the state. We also represent the Campaign for Southern Equality, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing LGBTQ+ civil rights throughout the South. The campaign provides grants to transgender people across the South who lack coverage for transgender-related healthcare needs, including filling gaps left by the state of Georgia's exclusions. Transgender healthcare is medically necessary healthcare. Every major medical association agrees. Employers and insurers throughout the state and throughout the nation cover it, but the state of Georgia refuses to do so for its own hardworking employees and their families just because they are transgender, just because of who they are. Public servants like Mr. Rich and Mr. Johnson and all of the hundreds of thousands of participants in the Georgia State Health Benefit Plan deserve to be treated fairly and have access to their health care that they and their doctors know they need. Time and again, courts have ruled that denying health care to people because they are transgender is not only morally wrong, it's also illegal. In June of this year, TILDEF achieved a landmark victory in federal court on this exact question after we sued Houston County, Georgia, in federal court in Macon for the exact same exclusion in its own employee health benefit plan. And the state of Georgia has also had to settle lawsuits that successfully challenged trans health exclusions in its Medicaid plan and in the University System of Georgia employee health plan. So we are confident of success in this case too. There is simply no room for discrimination in Georgia, and we call on the state to quickly settle this lawsuit and to start providing healthcare coverage fairly to all of their employees and their families. So thank you for coming today, and with that, I will hand it over to our plaintiff, Micah Rich.
Thank you, David. And thank you all for being here today. My name is Micah Rich. I am an accountant with the Georgia Department of Audits. Much like my coworkers, I have spent many, many years both in education and in experience working to get to where I am today as an accountant with the state. But unlike my coworkers, who also pay for their health insurance every month, just like I do, I am unable to access the health care that I need. Because I'm transgender, I have been denied medical treatments that my doctors and I have agreed together are necessary. Because of these denials, I've been forced to put my life on hold for years until I was able, both through the generosity of my friends and my family, and through immense sacrifice of my own, to be able to pay for my health care out of pocket. I do not believe this is something I should ever have had to do, and it's something that a lot of other trans people around Georgia probably would not be able to do. I'm a proud citizen of Georgia, and I love the opportunity to serve my fellow citizens, and I know the state that I love can do better in treating people fairly. Other employers also take their lead from the state of Georgia, and so I need the place that I love, my home state, to step up and do the right thing. So I will pass it off to Holiday.
Thank you, Micah. Good morning. My name is Holiday Simmons. I'm the Director of Healing and Resilience at the Campaign for Southern Equality. I live here in the former Muskogee Creek territories of Atlanta, Georgia. And at the Campaign for Southern Equality, we work across the South to promote LGBTQ equality, both legal and lived. And again, as we assess our community needs, we keep finding that the importance of health equity is one of the most pressing issues for trans communities. The fact is that LGBTQ Southerners experience disproportionate amount of health disparities, and even more so for trans people living in the South. And that is why it's so unacceptable that the state of Georgia's health benefits plan continues to deny life-saving, medically necessary care for trans people. There are so many problems within our country's insurance industry, and in this case, transgender people are being directly harmed. State employees who are trans, who are trans or are dependents of state employees are being denied procedures, medicine, and care solely because of our gender. CSE's members often write to us, all the time actually, seeking financial support to fill in these gaps. Support around healthcare costs and requesting help navigating our healthcare system, and identifying trans-affirming medical providers. We're eager to provide grants to those individuals and support as we can, but the truth is we shouldn't have to fill in the gaps for employers who are simply discriminated against because of their identity. We are proud to be a plaintiff in this case and push back against this exclusion. I want to live in a world where we think about health and wellness more holistically, as a matter of community care and government policy, where people can get the mental health services they need and the tools they require, where people can experience comfort and healing as integral to their lives rather than just a luxury. I know that this year has been one marked with a sharp rise in anti-transgender rhetoric, and the truth is that far too often, government institutions and extremist forces discriminate against transgender people by limiting access to necessary care. These discriminatory practices have the government intervening itself into conversations that should be private between a provider and a patient. It harms us, it limits our treatment options, and it's just plain wrong. Finally, to every trans person who has felt frustrated, othered, or hurt by the logistical maze of living as a trans person in the state of Georgia, I want to say that we see you, we hear you, we know that what you're going through, it's not right, and together we will change this.
Thank you, Holiday. I am Sebastian Smith, and I am the Organizing Director at the National Center for Trans Equality, or NCTE. NCTE is one of the nation's leading trans-led policy advocacy organizations. As my friends and colleagues have said today, all people deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, including transgender people. Regardless of our genders, race, religions, incomes, zip codes, we all deserve the opportunity to live our own lives free of harassment and political interference. Trans people are our neighbors, our co-workers, and our friends. They want the same things as everyone else, to make a living, support their families, and be a part of their communities. As public understanding about trans people grows, many policies that were based on fear and misunderstanding have subsequently been overturned, like a former ban on trans people serving in the military. Now that we understand that transgender people serve their country just as well as anyone else, our policies have come to reflect that. But there's still a lot of fear and misunderstanding to overcome. And some of the policies being proposed right here in Georgia reflect that. What we are seeing is an increasing onslaught of restrictive legislation focused on trans communities all across the country. In 2022, NCTE tracked 207 different pieces of anti-transgender legislation across 35 states. 12 states enacted at least one of these bills, and 2 more were blocked by a gubernatorial veto. More than 80% of these bills targeted the rights of vulnerable transgender youth and young adults. In addition, we saw politicians in several states using administrative tactics rather than legislative processes to attack the transgender community. Immediately after the midterm elections, what did we see? Several states began to already pre-file bills ahead of the 2023 legislative session that directly target trans people's access to health care, youth access to sport, challenges to parental rights, and even attempts to place restriction on our community's creative expression through the art of drag. We all deserve health care that is compassionate and tailored to our medical needs, and that is true for trans people as anyone else. Trans people deserve to be able to visit healthcare providers who can meet their needs without interference from politicians, and have policies in place so that they can access insurance coverage that also meets their or our needs. So far this year, we have seen at least 32 trans people who were victims of deadly violence. NCTE's Remembrance Report states trans women made up 85% of those taken from us this past year, and 70% of those trans women were Black. This violence was catalyzed by a cultural climate filled with anti-LGBTQ+ legislation. The sheer amount of anti-trans bills being introduced and passed into law continues to inhibit trans people's access to employment, health care, and social services, which then leads to social and economic implications that could put a trans person's life at risk. Governmental overreach has a tangible and lasting effect on many marginalized communities. People seek medical care from doctors, not politicians. All people deserve to have access to the care that they need in order to live safe, healthy, and happy lives, including transgender people. The largest survey of trans people to date that gathers the experiences of gender diverse people, the 2015 U.S. Trans Survey, states 1 in 4, or 25 of the respondents, experienced a problem in the past year with their insurance related to being transgender, such as being denied coverage for care related to gender transition, or being denied coverage for routine care because they were trans. More than half, or 55%, of those who sought coverage for transition-related surgery in the past year were denied, and 25% of those who sought coverage for hormones in the past year were also denied. In the past year, 23% of respondents did not see a doctor when they needed to because of fear of being mistreated as a transgender person, and 33% did not see a doctor when needed because they could not afford it. Contrary to the misinformation, arguments of anti-trans advocacy efforts, transition-related care is safe, effective, scientifically supported, and medically necessary. Affirming healthcare for trans people encompasses a broad range of safe and scientifically supported treatments and resources that are critical to transgender and non-binary people's physical, mental, and social health needs and well-being. Over the last 20 years, there have been vast improvements in research on gender-affirming care. Gender-affirming care, for those who don't know, describes medical interventions designed to support an individual's gender identity. Currently, there is a well-established body of evidence demonstrating that comprehensive affirming care is safe and should be made accessible to all trans people and non-binary people as well. According to the Williams Institute, there are an estimated 1.6 million Americans aged 13 and up who are transgender. We need laws at the federal and state level that make sure all people are treated fairly and that no one is subjected to discrimination in employment, housing, health care, health insurance, education, and any other area of life just because of who they are. We must come together to make not just this state, but our entire nation a place where everyone is treated with basic dignity and respect and can live their lives without interference from politicians and unjust policies. The America I believe in is a place of opportunity and freedom, and that means not taking away access to basic human rights for our most vulnerable communities. Thank you.
Good afternoon, or morning still. State workers in Georgia face challenges every day, particularly those that are parents of trans kids or are trans themselves. They have been denied the transition-related health care, and I get calls all the time from someone who wants to relocate here from New York or California or from anywhere else across the country outside the South, wanting to make sure that they and their children are protected. And I have to tell them they are not. Because of our trans inclusions that we do not have here when it comes to healthcare. They're exclusions. Therefore, they're unable to give adequate healthcare protections for their families. This is a problem that we see on a regular basis in the South. And to add insult to injury, currently, just this past summer, our governor signed legislation to even further hurt trans kids in regards to sports. Equality is not alive and well here in Georgia. We speak about this a lot and talk about equality as the birthplace of civil rights, but that does not extend to all Georgians and all residents here. Our kids, our adults who identify as trans are discriminated against on a daily basis. This is something that happens here in Georgia, but also in the South. It's important that we remember that we need to make sure that we should all be treated equally and be given equity. This can be rectified by starting with our healthcare, our most basic needs, to make sure that we are able to go to the doctor, have our mental health on the same level as every other Georgian. Thank you.
I appreciate everyone being here, and sorry, I guess let's open up to questions if anyone has any questions for any of the speakers. Yes?
This may be a question for Micah or David. Was the medical procedure denied because the state doesn't recognize trans people, or denied because the state/insurance didn't recognize it as quote-unquote medically necessary?
Quite simply, the Georgia State Employee Health Benefit Plan has an exclusion for all forms of transgender-related health care. So they'll cover the exact same thing for any other employee who needs it for some other reason. But if an employee is transgender and needs that exact same care, they take that coverage away.
Great. Any other questions? Yeah.
I was just wondering if someone could speak to the general cost of this kind of healthcare and what's the feasibility of somebody actually paying for it out of pocket?
Do you have any insight there?
Sure.
If not, maybe Sebastian.
Yeah. I mean, the cost of this healthcare is no different from the cost of any other healthcare. So this is not an issue of cost. This is simply an issue of equity. The state of Georgia has an employee health plan for its employees to ensure that they are healthy, they come to work every day, they care for their families, they have that most critical need taken care of. And there's nothing special about transgender healthcare. Like I said a moment ago, it's the exact same kind of healthcare that people get for all different kinds of reasons. And it's simply taken away from them when they need it because they are transgender. People who are trans should not be expected to have to pay out of pocket for their healthcare, no matter how little or how much, because they are transgender when the state of Georgia covers this healthcare for every other person.
Can I add to that?
Absolutely.
Just so you know also, the city of Atlanta has the protections for that. We have the health care of the city of Atlanta. Several other corporations, SunTrust, Bank of America, Delta, many other corporations here in Georgia also have those same coverages. So the state of Georgia absolutely can afford to do it too.
Chanel, I don't think you introduced yourself, by the way.
I am Chanel Haley from Georgia Equality. I am the gender policy manager.
And you were hoping for a settlement. I think you said that at the beginning of the state, and we've seen past settlements. But given the current political climate, all the transports bill from last year, do you think that the state officials will fight it just because it looks good politically for them?
I can't speak to what's in any politician's heart. I don't know what goes on in there, but absolutely, we do expect them to come to the table and settle because they've done it before. They know how to do it. They know it's the right thing to do. They know the law requires it, and so we're calling on them to do that here as well.
Are there other questions? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming. If you are looking for like stand-up or a one-on-one interview, if you could just find me after, we'll be sure to set you up with whoever you're looking to talk to. And thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.